All right, welcome to the first episode of W Ranch Podcast. I'm Emma Coffman. Today we have Greg Robinson, and we'll be talking a little bit about the performance horse industry. Greg, thanks for having and coming out here.
Oh, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, appreciate it. And so I guess first thing is a lot changed in the performance horse industry probably from when you first started. So I guess just kind of give a background of how you got into this industry, kind of where you came from, how you got to where you are today, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, quite a journey for sure. My dad was a horse trader, calf roper, team roper, and my first memories horseback. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even in school yet,
Yeah.
And back in the day, it was custom to roach the manes. So I'd sit on my dad's horse, and that saddle horn looked about that big, and them ears were about a mile down that
That's right.
roached mane. And we had a dude outfit.
Where at?
Just outside of Pocatello, Idaho. That's
Okay.
where I grew up. And he was a pretty wise man. He built it right next to a KOA campground. So the summers, all the campers are right there, rent horses and
Location, right?
Yeah, and I was always a pretty bold individual. And Dad, being a horse trader, he would bring a trailer full of ponies that had been trying to murder children. And like, here you go, son, got you some horses. So
Ride them through.
I mean, they would buck and tip over and drag me off on gate posts and run off with me. And then when I'd get them nice, he'd say, "What do you think about selling old Sundance?" And I'm like, "No, he's nice. I like riding him. He doesn't want to kill me." If like we sold
I enjoy
Sundance,
riding him. Yeah, that's right.
I could buy you 3 or 4 more ponies. And I'm like 6, 7 years old. Sounds good to me. So, and I rode through sale barns a lot when I was a little kid. And then, unfortunately, he passed away when I was 11.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And got my first job away from home when I was 12 on a ranch, guiding dudes. Mm-hmm. And then started riding bulls and
Traveled after that?
Yeah, did that for 20 years. And when I wasn't bull riding, I'd get on ranch jobs. I buckarooed in Nevada, and that's where I got a lot of my roots from the Vaquero style of horsemanship that I still use today. And from there, kind of got into horse training by accident, really.
How'd that happen?
I bought a horse from my buddy Tommy Hugas and trained it myself, and was going to Brandon's and day working, and people would say, "Where'd you buy that horse?" I'd tell them, "Who trained it?" "I did." "I didn't know you were a horse trainer." "Well, I'm not." "You want to ride one for me?"
Sure.
"Well, I guess."
Yeah.
And it just
Took off.
took off. I'd never been to a horse show till I was in my 30s, and I started training probably full-time late 20s.
Okay.
And started showing kind of by accident. Ended up showing in the NRHA a lot, and winning some titles in Idaho and the Northwest. And the horse deal we were talking about a few minutes ago, the places it's taken me, I never dreamed of.
Yeah, you travel a lot, especially from the rodeo deal, just from bull riding. I'm sure you got to travel. Did you stay in the States, or did you go down into the Mexico area at all, or did you just kind of stay up in this part of the world?
Actually, one of my best adventures, they hired me to go to Saipan. It's a little island in the South Pacific, kind of by Guam. And they had a tourist trap rodeo over there.
And what year was this?
90 and 91. I was over there for 9 months. And ride bulls and bucking horses and rope and get your picture taken. And it was the best job ever.
Oh,
it was
bet.
Great. It was great.
What's that Glenn Campbell song, Rhinestone Cowboy? You're just kind of picture show, huh?
A little bit of that.
Little bit?
A little bit of that. That was back when I was the other Greg Robinson.
The other Greg Robinson.
Yeah, he used to be a little bit of a renegade. We don't want to talk about that, though.
It's that transformation. It feels like everybody kind of has that. Well, back when I was younger, and I thought people were kind of full of it until I started hearing stories from back when they were younger. It's like, how the heck are you still alive?
Yeah, we have lots of those stories.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We don't want to go there.
So when you started getting into the horse training and showing side, did you start off doing more rodeo type events? I think a lot of people tend to start off in that area and then they kind of branch out. Where did you first start with the showing deal?
I was just starting colts and, 30-day deals in Idaho for like no money and outlaw horses. And then Kim Wagner, one of probably my biggest influence in horsemanship, he shows NRHA. He was looking for somebody to ride for him. And he liked having me around because I'd crawl on anything. And every once in a while, he'd put me on a good one. And I always ride a Wade saddle. And he's like, well, you need to pick an event, you need to show, or you're going to ride outlaws your whole life. You need to show. And I'm like, it's really not my thing, And I don't like riding them girly-looking saddles. I was such a buckaroo, And
That's too much shine for me, right?
Yeah. And then the lady had a paint horse that was really poorly bred, insane, and built terribly. And she wanted it to be a reiner. And I said, well, I've never shown one, but I'll give it a shot. And went and actually won the paint horse title that year in Idaho.
And what year was that?
97, I believe,
Okay.
or 98. And then the next year, I had that one crazy paint horse I was showing at Idaho Reinings. My first show the next year was the NRBC, biggest reining in the world.
Yeah.
When it was still at the Lazy.
Wow.
So they just kind of shot me out there.
See ya.
I went to the Lazy and I drew up right between Dale Hendricks and Tim McQuay, and I'm like, okay.
That's a confidence boost right there.
Yeah, but talk about education.
Oh, for sure.
So this journey of horsemanship, it takes so many different routes, So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to be reiner guy. And I chased that for a few years, and then I just, honestly, there's things going on in the training of them that I don't cotton to. And so I backed way off of that.
What parts of the training side for the reiners?
And I still ride some reiners. I show a bunch, but I want my horse to do their job because they love it, not because they're terrified not to.
Yep.
And I saw so much dominance, and I'm not saying everybody in the NRHA is that way. I mean, there's some great horsemen and horsewomen out there, but it just, the things I would see,
It's just in anything,
started,
though, right?
Started eating on me. Yeah, a lot of the performance horse deals.
I think there's tell me if you agree or disagree with this, but feels though paper side, it looks like it should perform at a certain level or it should perform a certain way. And then sometimes I think we try to shove, a square block through a circle hole sometimes. And we kind of shove it until it kind of somewhat fits. And I think that shows when they are in their show career. You can tell the horses that, just eat it up. And then there's horses that they're doing it, and they still look. I guess to people that may or not in the performance horse industry, they just say, "Oh, that looks cool," and it could. But I feel like as a rider, and when you're showing them, you can really feel that difference.
You sure should. You sure should. I guess one of the things that really bothered me is I got some blown up futurity horses that people paid a lot of money for. And they were a wreck. It took me a long time to fix them. So I said, you know what? I can play the game. I can still do it, but I'm going to do it my way.
Right. And for people that may not be experienced in that field, when you say blow up, just for people who may not understand what you're referring to, what sort of traits or behaviors are you seeing? Or is there more behavior type versus another?
The ones I had the most memorable experiences with were they just wanted to run off. They'd be going through the pen, and they're low-headed because they've been taught to be down here, And some horses carry themselves that way. That's how God created them to travel. And,
That's right.
So a lot of people don't understand that horse actually moves that way whether a rider's there or not, And they'll say, oh, they beat him up to get their head down there. No, that's not always the case. But some of them would, be halfway through a pattern and just pitch their head in the air and smooth the run off. And actually, the horse that I ended up showing at the NRBC 2 years, he was famous for running off and made the limited open top 20 on him both years. But the first year he ran off with me in the finals. So, but instead of ripping on him, pulling him in the ground and beating him up, I just brought him down to a walk, and then I just went two hands and kind of slow loped him out of there. He'd been beat up in the pen enough already.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of passion for the horse. They've done the most amazing things in my life.
I'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm sure that you've seen everything kind of from the Wrangler side of deal and Dude Ranch to using horses and then performance horse. You said you did the reining deal, but you do more NRCHA stuff now, or you kind of bobble
ranch versatility.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know what? It's the fastest growing.
It's very
thing
popular.
Out there. They're getting huge.
Very popular. There's a lot of little circuits that I see popping up. Over probably the past, what you would say, 4 years?
Yeah, a little further back than that. But the last
recently,
5 years, it's really caught fire, and nationwide.
Yeah.
They're having huge ranch championships at like WEC, the World Equestrian Center in Ocala. I mean, it's gotten really big.
Gotten big.
The Triple Crown, they had it for the first year last year at Paint Worlds. And Bud Lion, I think, won $77,000 at that. And it's all ranch versatility.
And so the horses that you got some studs at your own place.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, speaking of paints, I think we all like to throw a little shade on the paint side, but you've got a pretty nice.
Glad you brought that up.
Oh yeah. Dig on in.
Well, I have, especially my ranch buddies, they'll say, I hate paint horses. Them paints, they'll cuss them, and they go, well, but I like your paint.
That's right.
And I've been hearing that for years. I didn't pick paints. They just kind of picked me. I showed a lot of them in Idaho, too. It's just, people go, do you only ride paints? Oh, I'll ride anything you send me. I've shown quarter horses. But, we've got a really nice black and white stud. And
you did some stuff in 2020, if I'm not mistaken, with him, right?
Yeah, I won several world titles on him. And he's real versatile. I can team rope on him. Drag calves to the fire on him. He's won world titles in reining, trail, ranch riding, reserve world at steer stopping at Fort Worth at Paint Worlds.
I feel like horses should be that way, though. It's the ones that, and I touched briefly on it, working in the cutting industry, some of those horses, if they look at a tree sideways, they're just going from their stall to the trailer to the arena, stall, trailer, arena, and that's just the little trifecta that they're built in, and so...
Trick ponies.
Exactly. And that's not just at the cutting. I mean, it's with reining. I mean, some stock horses do the same thing. You kind of get in that routine, and so personally, I always thought that a horse should be well-rounded. If you can walk them through pasture and there's trees around you, they're not gonna
cross the creek.
Yeah, exactly. Even my mare, every once in a while she just freaks out over water. It's like, you're using horsey. This is part of life. You're gonna have to get used to it. And sat in the middle of a creek in Western Virginia for about 2 hours until she stopped picking up her feet.
Yeah. No, I love having, you talk to people and they say, well, this is my rope horse. And this is my reiner. This is my sorting horse.
This is my
this is my trail horse. Why not have that be one horse?
That's right.
So I think, and I got caught up in that trap of tunnel vision thinking on my training, when I was kind of wrapped up in that reining deal. And I'm so glad that I had those years and those experiences and the education in the reining, because reining and dressage are about as tough as it gets. I mean, it's pretty intricate stuff. But Tim O'Byrne from Western Horseman magazine, he wrote the book Cowboys and Buckaroos. He watched me ride one time in Vegas, and he said, you're really unique because you've taken the Vaquero Buckaroo thing and the performance thing and kind of meshed it together. And
What part about the Vaquero, like when you say that you brought a lot and that hasn't a lot of influence on your training, what about that did you cling on to, and what part of that made you want to, like what are the benefits, I guess, that you saw from that training style and that riding style that you thought, hey, no, I need to keep that and keep using it?
Well, it's the artwork of, when it came from Spain, the Spaniards brought it over, and that's where the Vaquero thing all kicked off. But the methodical working of cattle, not the ram and jam. The roping is more poetic. I mean, you see a guy on a really nice bridle horse, and you never see his hand move, and he's working and sorting cows off and roping, and he's right there, and the horse is quiet and calm, and his head ain't throwing up and his mouth ain't gaped open, and he's everywhere that rider needs him to be. You can't even see the rider move. It's just beautiful to watch a really nice bridle horse work.
Fluid, yeah.
And to be able to sort cattle and rope cattle and do all that, it's
jerking your hands up.
yeah. So the art of it, and I just to like I said, to see a good bridle horse and a good rider, I can watch it all day.
That's right.
I love it. So I had to find a way to hang on to that, but get my horses, sliding 25 feet and turning around a little faster and that. So I kind of come up with, and at my clinics, I go against the grain a bunch of what we've been taught straight across the board, whether you're a cutter, hunter jumper, dressage, reiner.
Talk a little bit about that. So for those who don't know, Greg does clinics. How often do you put
Every chance I
those?
get.
Okay. So
I will travel. Have saddle, will travel.
There you go. Now you know. So talk a little about that. When you have those clinics, what are some of the habits that you see most? And let's just say like the average rider who's had some experience. We're not talking about the people who've seen horse for the fourth time in their life.
Right.
But people who would say, yeah, I can probably stick one
ride
through type deal. Yeah. So what are some of the habits that you see as a general population come in, and you have to change that way of thinking and that frame of mind, and why?
Well, I think, and I say it kind of jokingly, but I'm serious, and I say it at all my clinics and expos. I think I come up with most of my methods primarily because I'm kind of by nature lazy, and I don't want to work that hard.
That's right. Yeah.
So
neither does the horse.
Right. So you see all these things that trainers work on, and I'm like, you're making this really hard. What if you just put your hand down and rode your horse? Ride his body, not his face. And that's the biggest thing I see at clinics, that people don't know what to do with their hands. So I'm sure you've been taught, everybody that's ever had lessons has been taught, you take, they give, you throw it away, right?
Fundamental of it.
You gather them up and they get where you want them, and then you
Pressure release that thing, yeah.
But I've found through studying horses that they're always looking for the length of that rein. So they're going to put their head up or too far down, looking for the end of that rein. So it's like a moving target that they can't ever hit the bullseye on, because every time they get to where they think it is, the rider moves it. Does that make sense?
It sure does.
So instead of a solid mark to shoot at, it's doing this, and they're like, oh, you want me over here? And then they change it. So and I learned this at about 2:30 in the morning, riding a spracked out Reminick filly in Las Vegas, and she was built kind of like a llama naturally. She'd look around her stall like this.
Head straight up,
But I would bid her up and turn her loose because I was just getting a start on her. And she'd run around the arena and be great. I'd get on her and do what I've been taught my whole life. I'd gather, she gives me her face and picks herself up, lope off, and I'd go to get out of her way, and she'd throw her head straight in my face. It was like a yo-yo. And I talk to my horses on occasion, especially when I'm frustrated.
Oh, yes.
And I stopped and I said, Philly, why can't you figure this out? Because when I bit you up and turn you loose, you can run, you can slide to a stop, you can roll back, you can change leads, walk, trot, lope, and you never hit the end of that rein. And those reins never move. And that's when I went, those reins never move. She knows exactly how long that rein is. So I was like, okay, this goes against what I've been taught my whole life. I gathered her up, legged her up into a lope. Couple of strides, I didn't let go of her, and she kind of was shaking her face, and I just waited, and she dropped her head and stayed there, and I couldn't even feel her mouth. And 2 circles later, I hung my reins on my finger like that, and she just was framed and cruising, and I'm like, why is nobody teaching this? You know how much crap I've been through trying to fix headsets on horses my whole life? So
through different methods, right? We kind of talked about talking about anything from those martingales, brain chains. I even talked about training fork, things like that. So,
but if you set your hand in a fair place and drive them to that place with your body, they might push on it a little bit, but within minutes, they know exactly where to be, and you can ride them all over the place and never feel their face. So I can, at clinics, I'll get either green horses or old spoiled hard-mouthed horses, and you'll never fix him. And then I get, because I'm a little different at my clinics, I ride all the horses.
Okay. Yeah, talk a little bit how you run those.
I ride in small groups, 5 or 6 people for 5 hours. Probably going to make some clinician folk mad, but you can't teach 20 to 30 people at once in an arena for $750 a whack. You can't do it. It's impossible.
I would agree.
Because you got a couple gals that are kind of the clinic hogs, and then all the wallflowers are hanging back, you know. And I don't ever want to leave somewhere and say, well, he was good, but he never got to me and my horse. I won't allow it.
I think that's you start a pretty sour reputation when you start having that
I don't
kind
know.
of...
There's some really, really, really very, very wealthy ones that are still doing it.
There are, but there's also there's a lot that plays into the glamorizing, I guess you could say, of certain trainers out there that I'm trying to be as polite as I possibly can. But, I mean, then again, we're also in an industry where... and I think this is with almost pretty much everything, but especially the horse world, it's everybody is right. Not a lot of people. And I'll sit there and I'll watch. When I first started getting into it, I just shut up and watched and watched and watched. And if I still wasn't getting it, then I would ask somebody like, okay, why are they scoring that way? Or what are they doing here? And I think it's one of the things I'd learned through college was doing the horse judging. I was like, oh, well, no shit, because that's what they're looking for.
Right.
Like, they're doing this, and you keep watching and watching and watching. And I don't think a lot of people do the background and the history, or at least the homework, if you would, to understand what judge dependent too, but what you call visual appeal, right? So from the ranch versatility standpoint too, that's very much a judge opinionated discipline.
Yeah, and gonna offend some judges, especially at a lot of the big shows, because they have the ranch side of it, and then they have the regular show side of it. You know, the regular Western pleasure and Western riding and all that, right? Well, they're not going to hire separate judges. Well, these people, nothing against them, but they've been judging that over there for decades. And they wouldn't know a good ranch horse if they had one stuffed up their tailpipe. They wouldn't. It's like...
That's exactly true, though.
So I want to tell them, so you guys come over here. Now, you tell me in this pen which one you want to go gather cows on.
Exactly.
Which one you going to catch tomorrow morning if you got to go ride some fence and maybe go through some creeks and through the brush and gather some wild cattle? Place it that way, why don't you?
They'll make a decision, maybe a little differently.
Yeah,
But,
so I love the ranch horse deal. It's right up my alley because it's versatile, and I train versatile. I want one horse to be able to do all things, and that's what I focus on at my clinics too. And I don't put myself on a pedestal. I tell everybody, every clinic, you can do exactly what I do. Everybody can do this, and I show them how and how simple it is. It really is. I say it all the time. Great horsemanship is just like salvation. It's so simple, it's stupid. Men can't help but screw it up.
it's funny that you say that though, because it almost seems that people just worry about focusing on getting a task done versus feeling the horse. And I'm sure you would probably agree with the statement that every horse moves differently and responds a little differently. And they might have a same trend, but there's no two horses are exactly the same.
Oh, yeah. People will say, how do you teach your horse to turn around? We could be here a little while.
That's right.
Because I've got several horses. The way I taught him to turn left is not how I taught him how to turn right. So I'm sure you've probably experienced this, rode with people. This is how it's done. Come hell or high water.
That's right.
You're going to do it my way, or boy, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And they'll tug and kick on them until they do it that way. Me, I go, you know what? You think I'm speaking Chinese arithmetic. So, as trainers and riders, we've got a story to tell, right? They've got a story of their own, too. We just got to get together and get our damn story straight.
That's right.
And it can't be all my way. I don't ignore bad behavior, but whether it's with a horse or a rider that I'm working with, I can find a positive way to fix it without bashing their ego, hurting their pride, or killing their spirit.
I think there's a difference between poor behavior and then probably more of a trauma response or something that's been beaten into them so much that they're, I use the term beaten lightly, but they've been disciplined and to react a certain way so much that that's now just their blunt reaction.
Right. I've found that horses, it's like the rule of three. Good behavior or bad behavior, if it's happened 3 times or happened to them 3 times and they behave a certain way, that's who they are. But you can change that. Yeah.
I like that.
So at my clinics, I'll make circles. And I'll say and even trainers will go, what's this, grade school? He's got cones out to ride between cones and circles. Yeah, put your hand down and ride your horse between there. Ride a perfect circle. And because that's willingly guided. But people, they get too handsy and their horses are all over the place, right? And I'll get them going on there, and that goes back to what I started to say. I train and teach a lot different than what we've all been programmed to do, because everybody's been taught, look where you're going, right? Don't look at your horse. His head ain't going to fall off. Look where you're going. If you look right, he'll turn right. No, he won't. Because if you think of physics and common sense, if I take my hand here and my head here, my hand and my head says right. Every other part of my body is sending that horse that way. It's just physics. Because you're going to change.
I sit here turning my chair trying to.
Whether you're standing or sitting in a chair, when you turn here and you slightly turn your core, it changes the weight in your pin bones. And you are going to push that horse this way the more you go like this. So you've seen those horses that really fold the rib cage around.
Yeah.
So I've studied it so much, horses will mirror everything we do. So if you drop your shoulder and look right here in your turnarounds, your horse is going to start dropping his shoulder really bad. You square yourself up and ride here, they'll pick that shoulder up. In stops especially.
I'm sitting here running through every scenario with my mare in this past 2 months. She's bouncing back from EPM, and so it's been a long road, but we're reminding ourselves on how we should behave as a horse. And I'm just thinking, well, hell, that mare just dropped her shoulder when we were going to the left 2 days ago. Well, hell, that mare. I mean, I'm sitting here running through all those scenarios in my head as you're talking, but
think about stops, like you see the old the reining stops, and where that rider's at and how that horse is stopping. So if a rider comes back here, if that rider's sitting back here with his shoulders behind their hip, what's that do to your back? It hollows your back. That horse may drop his butt in the ground and be stopping, but he throws his head up and his mouth's probably open. But then you see the horses stopping more like this, more level, really getting in the ground, and they're more level and broke free traveling in that front end. That rider's more
Hunched
here.
over, yeah.
So if the horse has to drop its butt in the ground, commit to it with its hind legs, and soften around his back, that's what we need to do.
Yeah, because when a lot of people, when they stop, or at least the way I was taught by a reiner a while ago, was when you mash down in those stirrups, instinctively you want to rock back, because, and I had to break myself out of this habit. When I mash down, a lot of times that leg travels forward.
Then I stop my horses with my feet out in front of me.
But see, that's the thing, is like some people or some trainers will sit there and tell you can't don't throw your feet forward. Don't throw your feet forward. You need to sit down, not rock back. And I guess it's depending if you're trying to fix maybe what you're doing with your upper body from your hips up. But
I tell people, get smaller, not taller. Don't stop up here. Stop down here. So whether you're sending your feet forward, you know, because different events, or you know, the cutters, they're not going to throw their feet forward like a reining horse.
Yeah.
And so it's a little event specific.
Right.
But for me, I want to get smaller, sit down deep, and just like stepping on the brakes out in front of me. And I tell people, horses believe you, and they'll match your level of commitment. So like if I've got a horse that'll slide 30 feet, and I put somebody on it, and I just say, run down there, sit down, say, whoa, commit to that stop. They'll run down there, stop, and that horse will get in the ground and start sliding. And the second that person drops his feet down, that horse will stand right
Pops
up out of
back
that.
up, yeah.
Why'd he quit? You did. He's just believing what you're doing. They'll match everything you do.
Interesting. Well, so when you are training, so I guess how much of your time is working with outside horses, showing, and then the clinics?
That's
A changing question.
Well, that's been a subject of inner battle with me for quite a while. I've swore I'm not getting in trainer trap. I'm just going to go teach, because I love teaching. You know, when I see people truly get it,
You get excited for
and they've
'em.
been frustrated, and they've been to this clinic, that clinic, the other clinic, and had people say, you need to sell that donkey, cut his head off, you know. And I fix it for them, and they can actually do it themselves. I get a lot of tears on cheeks, not because I'm being mean to somebody, but because I showed them they could and that their horse could, you know. And that means more to me than a gold buckle. And so the show thing's been really good. But it's really not where my heart is. And I appreciate all the clients that I've got. I've got some fantastic clients, and that really believe in me, and I take pride in riding for them. But I'm at a point where I think I got a lot bigger message. I got a bigger purpose than going to the show pen. I want to go out there and truly help people. So I had a guy ask me what I charge for clinics, and he's like, "No, you need to raise your prices like $300 a day above what you're doing, because people won't think you're worth it if you keep your prices low."
Yeah.
I said, you know what, man? I'd do this for free if I could afford to. I'd give it all away. Because much has been given to me. I've got a list 10 miles long of people I need to thank, you know, and people get kind of trainer or clinician focus, and I say, go ride with everybody you can. You'll learn something, even if it's what not to do.
That's what I grew up hearing on my entire life. You can learn two things from every person you meet: how to be and how not to be. And I feel like it's the same way. But it's the same saying as people focus so much on money, or they focus on so much on materialistic items. It's not really, you can't take anything with when you go. But if you can have an impact and lasting impact on people when you leave, that's I think right now a lot of people.
That's what I'm after.
Absolutely. And right now there's a big drive and focus on how much money you can make and being successful, an entrepreneur. And, you know, I was kind of on that mind track for a little bit coming out of college, and I realized, it just kind of hit me one day. It's like, I don't want to leave that when I die. My great-grandfather, there's people still to this day that come up to me and say, well, Horace married us 50, 60 years ago, or your, you know, great uncle did this and great uncle did that. And I want to have that kind of impact and legacy, ideally more on something that I'm more specialized in, which would be on the ag side. But it's just saying that satisfaction of helping people means more than any dollar value.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I love what I do. Absolutely love it. So, yeah, I'm still taking outside horses and I'm still showing, but I am this close. So if you want me to ride one for you, you better call quick, because I'm fixing to quit.
That's right.
Because I just, you know, and the expensive things. You know, I'm at Dos Caminos Ranch over there by Valley View, Texas, and great place, great managers and owners. I love the place. But, you know, it's X amount of dollars per stall. And then there's shavings, and hay is higher than a giraffe's butt, and grain is going up every day. And then trying to find some reliable help is next to impossible. And so when you think of all that overhead, it's a little crazy to stay in the game when I can go on the road and not get caught up in anybody's barn drama. You know, you just roll in there.
What drama in a barn? Never.
Yeah, right. You just roll in, shake hands, give hugs, ride for a few days, make
And roll
everybody happy, get paid, more hugs, more handshakes. See you next time.
That's right.
I'm out. And I'm so blessed by these animals. They're the greatest thing ever. I have sat on a horse in the surf in Southern California and watched dolphins play right in front of me. I've rode through Central Park. I got cast in a movie. I'm sitting here with you, all because of a horse.
Yep.
So I owe them my very best.
Absolutely.
I'll try not to get choked up on that one, but I do. I owe them my very best.
Yeah.
I owe it to these animals to do the best I can to make it to where even if they are a performance horse, I can get you to perform at the top of your game without it costing you anything.
Yeah.
I want you to love it, not fear it.
Absolutely.
So
And
that's my big push.
yeah, and then talking about the cost of things, I mean, shoot, between show fees have gone up, renting out stalls at these shows have gone up. Let's just forget about the prices of trailers and trucks and diesel. Like that, let's just throw that out the window. I mean,
Don't get me on politics.
is that a warning?
Yeah. Yeah.
But now that those shows have gotten, talk a little bit about that. How when you first started doing the show deal, how that culture and environment has changed, because it's definitely changed.
Yeah. I think especially with I'm not an NRHA basher.
No.
I'm not.
They're just easy to pick on.
But I'll use that one for instance. It was a lot different when I started. There was a lot more family doing it, and guy like me that didn't know Sikkim ended up in the top at the NRBC, and I didn't even know what the heck I was doing yet. But it's gotten to be an elitist deal.
It has.
There's that top percentage, and if you ain't in that group, good luck. And the horses have become more, trying to find a nice way to say this.
Inbred?
Well, yeah, that's another story. But they pitch them away, I don't ever want to take a horse and run the wheels off of it and then right before the big show call the client and say, he's too steady. He won't, we need to sell him and get you another one. Because that goes on a lot. Mm-hmm. And I just won't let it cost a horse anything. And I don't want it to cost my clients. I've made some clients a little upset because I've called them and said, look, I know what you think your horse is, but I'm not going to waste my time and your money because he ain't never going to be it. I can ride him from now till next Christmas, and he's not going to be the horse you think he is. And if I'm not the world's greatest horseman, never claimed to be, you think I'm full of it, take him somewhere else and see if somebody else can get the job done for you.
Right.
And I always get them people back because I was honest with them.
That transparency and honest, it may cost you, like for me being in sales, it might cost me a sale, but that respect, there's no dollar value on that.
Absolutely.
And again, going through the whole square trying to go, square peg trying to go through a round hole, it doesn't, you can kind of make it work, but that, I'd much rather say, that ain't going to fit, let's try something else, or maybe I can't do anything for you. With you, it's the horses. With me, it's a program. And then when you do have that horse that does fit, or if you want to go shopping for a horse or something else, maybe we can come back around. But I would much rather lose business and be honest with someone than try to BS them.
Because they're going to remember that.
And I learned that fairly early on in life. And then into my professional field, I watched other people that were okay with the little white lie and okay with trying to make things work. And there's a lot of people I probably ticked off because I refused to do it.
Good for you.
And
I make a lot of people mad.
Again, or never.
not intentionally, but anybody who knows me knows I got a line, and I stand on what I believe in, and there's not a whole lot of right and left of that.
Call a spade a spade.
Yeah, and in the industry we're in, it's so diversified. There's people from all walks of life, all income levels. I think I've ridden dang near every breed of horse there is on the planet, and I tell people all the time, if you want to go do an event, if you want to be a trainer in an event, that's fine and good, but why not be versatile? Because then when somebody sends one to you and says, well, he's bred like such and such and such and such, and his daddy did this and blah, and he's a reiner. Well, let's ride him and see if he's a reiner. Maybe he's not a reiner. Maybe he'll make a nice heel horse. Maybe he'll is way better on a cow.
And then you can switch and just put him on the training for that.
Yeah, I had a Gunner Special Night filly, and she could do all the reining stuff. She could stop, turn around, do all the stuff. Cute little horse. Hated the show pen. She would sabotage us just about every run. Be going through there great and then drop a lead out of nowhere. And you're like,
you know better.
What are you doing? Mm-hmm. But everything I ride sees a cow. I get a lot of problem warm bloods from the East Coast. And everything gets put on a cow.
It's good.
Yeah. And
see
that's my secret weapon.
Cow-scared horses out there.
And, but she loved a cow. So last year at Paint Worlds, I drew her out of the reining. I said, nope, I'm doing ranch riding and ranch rail pleasure and ranch cow work. And she had the best show of her life and ended up reserve world champion in the cow work.
Oh, dang.
Because she kept telling me, I don't want to do this.
It's just like your kids, though, people that got kids, and just because you were a football player or you were a cheerleader or something doesn't mean your kids wanted to.
Right.
My mom died. I mean, she wanted me to be volleyball so bad. I wasn't going to do it. Wasn't going to do it. Refused to even slide them shorts on. Wouldn't do it. Where did I end up? I ended up playing football. That's a story for another time, though. But
got to hear that.
Oh, yeah. Middle school, I did football. My dad was played ball for LSU. And back when I was in middle school, I was still the same height, 5'9", and so everyone was tiny. And so it was either volleyball or football. And I was like, well, I've got anger problems. Let's take it out on someone else. And I loved it. I loved hitting the snot out of some people. But that and soccer, those were my sports. That's what I liked to do. My brother, I did the whole livestock thing. He had no care. Now, he could build a computer. He could throw whatever technology his way. He could get it all figured out. Me, like, I think my phone's broken. No, it's a silent button. You flip it. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
that's
AT&T.
that's a great analogy though with horses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let them do what they want to be good at, because they're all good at something.
They are
Even if it's a bucking horse.
good at bucking.
Even if it's a bucking horse. You know.
So going off that line, talking about lines and pedigrees, what do you have any sort of favorites that you've got, or is it more of just let's just see what that, obviously that individual animal of how and what it can do, but is there certain lines that you like to see on a paper?
Oddly enough, old blood,
Like,
sugar bars.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
never, I don't care how far back it is, if there's sugar bars there, I'm going to like that
Interesting.
horse. That's the one
Okay.
that stands out on the good side.
Right.
The other side is impressive bred horses. Not a fan. And I've won stuff on in some impressive bred horses, but they all got some wiring issues.
Some shorts in there.
Yeah. And never the same ones, but some really quirky ones like, that is bizarre behavior and you won't get over it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, the sugar bars horses have always been really good. Hickory dickory dock horses. I rode a bunch of them back home in Idaho. They're like born broke, and they just want to try, and they don't want to buck and fight, and just excellent horses.
My mare on her mama's side goes back to Hickory. It's like pretty far down the line, but
Yeah, you know, there's the lines that, you know, a great line of reined cow horses that are kicking butt are the Traveling Jones horses. Great horse. You better be pretty cowboy to get them started.
really,
Yeah,
they got some spirit to them.
yeah,
They got a will to live.
they a lot of them got a will to buck, buck your butt off. And I'm not smutting the horse. I mean, he's a
No.
producer. He
Yeah.
creates great horses, but them colts are not for the weak of heart. I can promise you.
Absolutely. That's
They're
just
a
like
little
those
rank.
futurity aged horses. Some of them have a fire in their belly that it takes a long time to, and that loping pin just calming them down to the point where you can get off of them without them just.
Yeah, I say it all the time. I'd rather fight to build a fire than fight to put one out. They show better. I can always get more gas.
I like that. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, I don't mind pushing one up a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's not very pretty when you got to fight fire when you're out there showing.
So what's your opinion on a lot of these performance horses are just so amped up, and that's just sometimes it's just individual or just how they're bred. They just are naturally a little more amped up, as Corey would say. It's a little more C4 in the blood. But so what's your opinion on just you get them tired to the point where they just I guess the argument is saying that they're tired to the point where that wild's out of them and that they're actually too tired and they're ready to focus. But I always kind of thought if you get them too tired, maybe they're just following your direction just because it's the path of least resistance, not because it's a habit that they're picking up.
Right. Well, I think that goes back to the daily training. I mean, naturally, some bloodlines are hotter than others. And you've got to match your riding, your daily program with that. But I see it all the time. Think of somebody working a young horse on the flag, right? So they warm them up and they take them over and put them on the flag. And this colt goes down there and gets in the ground and comes through that turn clean and gets in the ground and comes through like 3 or 4 turns. Right there is I quit. I'm done.
Yep. And on a good note.
Yeah, and I see so many people, they go, oh, he's getting it. They keep going. That horse is going to get tired. And he's not going to be as snappy on that turn, and he's going to maybe be a little lazy on a stop. Well, you can't quit there. So
But you just get more and more tired.
Then they're
yeah.
stewing on them, and before long, both of you are exhausted and pissed off. And what has that horse learned, you know? So I've gone into the psychology of training a bunch, and I was riding with my good buddy Steve Graycheck down in Ocala, Florida here a couple months ago. Great guy, good horseman, good trainer. And I stepped on a colt that he was having a little trouble with the turnaround on. And I went to turn him around, and that colt just locks up. And I go, oh, this is my favorite part. He goes, what? I said, oh, this used to piss me off so bad when they just grab that bit and lay on my leg. He goes, yeah, it still pisses me off. I said, this is the best opportunity I got to get this horse to learn. And I won't add an ounce more pressure. So if I ask you a question and you give me the wrong answer, I'm not going to change the question. Riders do that all the time. They're going to change the pressures. They're going to change their hands, change their legs, change direction. They're going to change something. So how believable are you to that individual you're trying to teach? So I set it up. I'm not going to kick harder. I'm not going to pull harder. I'll sit there all day. I'm going to make you use your head for something other than a bridle rack. I want to create thinkers, not stinkers. But see, trainers, that's the difference, in my opinion. Trainers want a reaction. They set that up. That horse doesn't react. They're going to make them react.
Yeah.
A horseman will make that horse think its way through it. And so Steve was like, what are you talking about? I said, I'm just going to sit here. I'll sit here till tomorrow morning. I don't care. Bring me coffee, black. And pretty soon I feel that horse just start to move. And he only moved his foot maybe that far. And I just quit everything and let him stand there for about 15 seconds, 20 seconds. And then I set it up again, and he went and stepped over. I said, now, because I took the time to let him learn what he was supposed to do instead of forced it on him, that's how I create a confident horse that in the show pen, when the heat's on, I know I can count on him because I've never taught him not to trust me. I've never forced it on him. I made him think his way through it. Create problem solvers, not problem makers.
Yeah, right.
So if you get tougher and tougher and tougher, what are you really teaching? So I'll just sit there and wait it out. And when they go to take that step, I don't ask for 3 more steps. You moved it that far. That's what I asked. And pretty soon they'll pull their heart out for you.
Do you feel like when you're working on those horses, whether it's training or riding, do you feel as that when you're putting that pressure on, people expect a night and day difference? Like they give you an inch, and you keep asking for another inch and an inch and an inch until that horse, in your mind, you want them to give a mile, but what you're really teaching them is just to give the bare minimum of each go.
Well, I want try. So I put a post on my Robinson Horsemanship Facebook page that went pretty viral. I said, what kind of boss do you want to work for? You ever work for a real jerk that's like hanging over your shoulder, faster, better, more production? So-and-so does it better than you.
For that yet.
So-and-so does it better than you. How come you can't perform like so-and-so? And they're just, 2 things are going to happen. One of 2 things. You're going to hate your job, and it's going to suck all the life out of you, and you're just going to be like a robot going to get your check. Or you're going to say, you can take this and shove it, pal. But one of those 2 things are going to happen to you. I don't want to do that to my horses. I want to be fair with them. I can get good results in little pieces. And I don't ignore what's wrong, but I don't have to focus on what's wrong. And I focus on the positive all the time. So when I go to my clinics and I get on several horses, first thing, I don't bring their app sheet with me when I get on them. Because I'll go, can I get on your horse, ma'am? Yeah, but he hates everybody in a black hat. He hates men. And, anybody with a mustache like that, don't dare get on him, And spurs,
which is pretty on point, by the way.
Well, thank you. It's a new thing for me. After 57 years looking at the same face in the mirror, I needed something different to look at.
It's very in right now, but a lot of them, younger generation, I call it the peach fuzz stash or the porn stash. They just...
You said that word.
Yeah. I think they've learned around here that I'm pretty open and blunt with a lot of things.
Mike's sitting out there on the couch is cracking up right now because we had to talk about that on the way down here. Yes, we did.
I make fun of them, though. I'm sorry, but if you're anywhere between like your late teens to mid 30s and you got like this little peach, I'm gonna make fun of you. You just leave the door wide open. Anyway.
But what's worse is the throat beard. I hate the throat beard.
So what's your opinion on mullets?
I used to have one. Oh, did I admit that on air? That was like
That was
when I was bull rider, dude.
yeah.
Like back in the day.
See, I see kids running around with the FFA. Dale Brisby, he's got his darn thing, and I just see those mullets everywhere, and I'm like, I would kill my kid. I would come there in the middle of the night and just no. I mean, I don't know if it's because I'm jealous or what, but
I know I'm over it. That's for sure. Ain't gonna happen to me again.
I feel like it's either mustache or the mullet. You can't have both.
Right. And never a throat beard. Never the throat beard.
No.
Anyway, how did we go that far out there? Hey,
You never know.
right? But that's what keeps it fun.
That's right.
That's what keeps it fun. But anyway, riding the different horses at the different clinics and just being patient. I don't need the rap sheet. You got a clean slate with me.
Yeah.
And so as a rider yourself, you know your horse has got issues with certain things, right?
Yeah.
And we're carrying that to them when we go to step on them.
It's kind of like dating almost. It's like every person you meet you should give them a clean slate, but you still have learned from the past. When you see certain things here and there, you're like, I've seen that before. I say that, and I'm not dating. But anyway,
I don't want to bring up my marriage history and hoping for clean slates.
maybe not the best analogy in the world, but
as you're talking, I'm going, yeah, I remember when I thought she had a pretty clean slate.
not everybody does. Sometimes you get those double-bred Hancock come through, and you're like, nope.
Yeah, so.
Oh, gosh, that's funny.
But at least horses are honest. I love
That is
horses.
true.
Because even if they're a
That
bronc,
is true.
they'll say, you know what, you might want to watch me.
Yeah.
I'm a jerk.
Look.
But humans won't give you
And they
that.
can't sue you. They might cost you some money at the vet or something, but at the end of the day, you can always sell the son of a gun.
Right. But I've heard every excuse for horse behavior there is, you know, and I'll say, can I get on him for a minute?
Yeah.
Because I'm not bet, and I say it at every clinic. I'm not claiming I know everything and my way's better. I'm just saying this is what works for me. I'm not saying I'm right and everybody's wrong.
Right.
And if I'm patient and I get up there with confidence, because look at horses out in the herd. Anything goes wrong, where does everybody go? Straight to the most confident horse in the herd. They crave confidence. And so if I'm calm and I keep my energy levels low, you know, you've seen it, people that get on a horse and they're all,
Oh, yeah,
and
they're
the horse
scared.
starts crawling out of
Yeah.
their hide. Energy matters to these animals big time. So I keep my energy levels real low, and I know it's going to go good. Every horse, no matter what kind of a turd they are, I go, this is going to go good. Going to be the best day of your life. And I get on and just wait them out. And pretty soon they just start softening up and doing the right things. And then I joke with them and say, I just put 2 months of riding on your horse. So you know, now owe me $2,400.
That's right. It's like you can just write that check out and leave it
Yeah.
before you head on out.
But the simplicity of what I do is probably the hardest thing for people. They think it's got to be harder than that. And I tell them, no, this ain't hard. Think common sense. Forget everything you've been taught. Just think common sense. What's it matter to this animal what you're doing on his back?
Right.
And that's when my whole life changes. Is when and it sounds boastful, and I don't mean it that way, because there's enough ego in the industry. I don't need to add to it.
Just a tick.
Yeah, just a skosh. But I got to a place for me personally in my riding that I was like, my greatest fear is getting stagnant. I do not ever want to be stagnant or get to that pinnacle and go, I'm a super horse, dude. I know all this.
Yeah.
That's when I become useless to a horse, when I get to that point, and to anybody who rides with me. So I always want to continue my education with them, and I couldn't find anybody I wanted to really ride with, because either I know what they do and I don't like it, or I already know how to do what they're doing. And I was really stuck, and I thought, well, okay, well, I know what the two-leggers say about it. What do you say about it? And I really started thinking about it from the horse's standpoint. And that's when I changed how I guided them and taught them to get through obstacles and different things. And I just said, what would you do? What works best for you? And everything changed, and it got easy. And so I can take some pretty problem horses and get them through the show pen, which goes back to, you talking about the horses that you see in the show pen that are ready to crawl out of their hide.
Right.
That happens at home. And it happens in the riders' minds, too. How many times have you heard people say, he rides so good at home, but he is such a puke when I go to town? Guess what, sister? That's the same horse you rode at the house yesterday. That horse didn't change. You did. So I gave some advice to a lady that's a pretty famous gal. Her and her husband have a big operation. And we were just chatting on the internet. And she said, I'm going to be a 70 today. I've never hit a 70 with this horse. She can run 71s at home all the time. Today's our day. It's going to happen today. And I said, why don't you be a 68? Excuse me? And I said, you've put in the time and the work. You're on a 71 horse, right? Yeah. I said, okay, well, subconsciously, when you go to that show, you are asking yourself and your horse to be just a little bit better than you really are, and you're plugging all of that straight into your horse.
Yep.
I said, so why don't you just try to stay out of the penalty box and be a 68 and see what happens? Ride your horse where it's at that day. And she called me the next day, and she said I was a 73 and won it.
Wow.
Because it takes pressure off of you.
It does, because I remember my first few times in the cutting pen, I wanted to do well so badly that he felt it. I had this high expectation. He felt it. And then, of course, my whole body was telling him everything but do your job. And looking back on video now, if any of y'all still have that video, please delete it off your phone. It's rough looking back at it, and it's the same thing that stock shows with growing up, and it was the same way like my senior year. It was just like, F it at this point, it is what it is, and I showed the best that I ever had before when I just relaxed and was like, it is what it is. I know there's other people out here that are probably going to whoop the snot out of me. Well, let's just take it how we go. And that relaxation, again, like you talked about, it's your mind, that energy. That horse is so in tune with how you feel that, and I'm guilty of it all the time too. Someone will say, oh, well, that horse was a little flighty on me or a little spooky on me, and I get on it. Most of the time, I'm like, whatever. If I fly off, let's just hope it's not a tractor this time, because that's happened before. But when you tense up, they tend to throw their head up a little bit. And then like the days that you sit there, like, last time I rode them, they wasn't no big deal, and just so much more relaxed.
Probably one of the most educational things I've ever had was I went to an event at a private ranch in Texas. I don't even, kind of by Goldthwaite, I think, and met this family and became friends with them on social media. And like 2 weeks later, found out the husband had got hurt really bad, broke his hips and pelvis. Called to check on him, and when he got home from all his surgeries and stuff, I called to check on him, and he said, I broke my hip and my pelvis and got my first medical bill. And he said, and I had this Mustang for the Mustang Million, and I ain't going to get to ride it. And there's the voice, ride the horse, ride the horse. And this is when I'd first moved to Texas, and I was out in West Texas.
Where at?
Truscott by Kroll. So my hat's a little flat for that country out there, and my rope's too long, and they wouldn't even wave at me out there. You know? It was like, ugh, one of them flat riders. So
it's okay.
I ain't got to point my hat to the cows to know where they're at. Thin may be in, but flat's where it's at.
I'm using that. There's a few people I think I'm going to use that on.
But, you know, and I was broke as I've ever been as an adult. We were struggling, but I just kept hearing the voice, you got to ride the horse. Well, this guy wasn't a horse trainer. The only reason he got that Mustang is because his little girl was doing lead Mustang stuff at the Mustang Million.
Yeah.
And there's only been one actual Mustang Million. So, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I can't afford it. But I said, tell you what, I won't charge you a dime. Let me get your horse. I'll ride him there, see if I can win some money for you and your family. So I go and get him. And these days, Mustangs, you can see some Mustangs that, unless they got that freeze brand, you wouldn't know they were some crapper off the desert. I mean, there's some nice looking horses out there. They got some blood in them. This was old school Mustang. Had a back as long as a polygamous clothesline, tall, skinny hocks, no butt.
Looks like a kid's drawing.
Yeah, and the guy had sat on him 3 times, but he didn't know he'd been rode. And so you got like 120 days to work with him. And by the time I got to Fort Worth, I put the 23rd ride of this horse's life on him there. And I just said, I'll keep it simple. Just give me your face, stay between my legs. That's all you got to do. Yeah. And the smallest class was like 49. That was the dressage. And I won a check in that. And then 4th in freestyle, 4th in cow work and reserve champ and reining and reserve champ and trail. And I almost got caught up in that. Man, we're winning a lot of money on this thing. You know, like, I think I can win it. I think I can win this next class. Yeah. And then I'm like, nope. Don't do that to this horse. Don't change your mind. Don't change your heart. Just keep it simple, stupid. And just don't push it. Just keep him quiet and lope through there. And I ended up winning like 10 grand on a $200 Mustang with less than 30 rides. And what a great lesson it was for me.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because I'm like, I just won all this on a $200
horse,
ill-built Mustang. I've never done that on a quarter horse or a pain at one event, you know, and it taught me, you know, and it's a good message to share with people, you know. Just because you're from the wrong side of the tracks don't mean you got to stay on the wrong side of the tracks.
That's true.
You can rise up. You can be anything you want to be.
We talked about before I made the comment of a lot of people tend to victimize themselves and put themselves in their own situation. And I always said that trend of victimizing yourself seems to be a generational thing, at least around my generation, and that you can come from the best of the backgrounds and be in the worst of spots, or you can come from the worst of backgrounds and be making just a whole new legacy for yourself. And it's exactly the same way that it depends on how bad you want it, I think. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I credit a lot of that to my bull riding, because that's a mental warfare right there.
I imagine.
If you got it, if you're worried about getting hurt and you're thinking about
you're hurt, you're out. You can't really
getting bucked
do anything.
off.
Yeah.
Go home and crochet doilies. Don't be a bull rider. You got to have.
You got to do something.
You got to be mentally tough.
Yeah.
So that trained me up pretty good in mental toughness, and growing up without a dad, and
had to grow up fast.
Yeah, and pretty dadgum wild too, and so I had that mental toughness about me that I've carried on through my life, but some people get toughness kind of screwed up in their head, and you ain't got to act like a friggin' jerk just because you're tough, you know, and a lot of the macho thing. It's like, shut up.
You can still be a decent human being without.
Right. So, I had a lot of, this is going places I didn't expect to, but, being fatherless and rowdy as hell. It's because I've always taken pride in everything that I was doing, including being wild. I was like, I want to be the wildest son of a buck ever pulled on a pair of cowboy boots. I hadn't watched. And
Untamed.
So, yeah, and I wasn't a bad person. I didn't hurt anybody or steal anything, things like that, but I was dang sure wild. And I was kind of picked out at school to be the dude that would spend his life behind bars, kind of a guy. And a lot of my life I was told I couldn't. Even in the bull riding deal, I was told I couldn't, because I've always been big chested, big armed, not really built like your 135-pound bull rider. And I wasn't a great bull rider, but I rode some bulls that had never been rode before, And I love it when people say, you can't do that. I'm like, oh, yes, I can.
Yeah.
Hide and watch. And so I got to credit the good Lord and horses for where I'm at and all the great things that's happened in my life, because I could have been a career criminal pretty easily, I suppose, but I chose differently. And choices, matter.
Really?
Choices matter, and your attitude about what you're going to. Everybody goes through bad things, if I dwell on it, what good is it going to do me? It's not going to do me an ounce of good, or anybody around me. We all go through crap. Get over it. Let's get on another one. Let's go.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I honestly think that I heard this from somebody, and it stuck with me. And say, if you're having trouble connecting with God, sit on a horse or sit in that barn and hang out with those horses until you feel it. And I grew up in the church. Grew up going to church every Sunday for the most part, and my whole family, both sides, very religious, faithful, God-fearing Christians. And I grew up thinking I was. And my first job out of college, I was out in Virginia. I was not in a good mental headspace, environment space, both professionally and personally wise. And I remember I was getting the same mare I've got right now. It's kind of why I think I'm hanging on to her probably more than I should. But I'm sitting there trying to get her into this just piece of shit trailer. I mean, I'm just going to say it. I was borrowing it from somebody. It was a steel trailer. It was hot. I wouldn't want to get in it. Like, I sat in that thing. I'm like, thank God I'm only 30 minutes down the road, because this thing sucks. But I had to go. I was gathering up cattle. That's what I had to do it. And it's the only thing I had. And I was like, all right, well, here we go. And we loaded up fine. Not a problem. Got there, did our thing. Starting to load up. She wouldn't get in. And I'm sitting there doing everything I can think of. I mean, all the rope tricks. I even have freaking, food-oriented horse. I had feet in there. She'd take one step in and back out. One step in and back out. And it dawned upon me in that trailer in the middle of BFE, Virginia, with no cell phone service or nothing. It hit me that I was that horse. And God was me in that standpoint, where God's just if you just trust me, you take that one step in and you just get onto this thing. Like, the ride may not be the best in the world, but the end destination is you're going to be able to relax, you're going to be taken care of, you're going to be washed, you're going to be fed, you're going to be able to rest. And I started bawling for an hour. That mare's like, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you, but I'm going to sit over here and just let you work your malfunctions out. And it still gets me emotional to this day, though, because that horse and that environment has set a new foundation for my relationship with Christ. And without her, it may have taken me a few years to get to where I really want to be as a Christian. I still learn and I fail as a Christian every day, but
yeah. Who don't?
Exactly. You have to have some realistic expectations for you. You have to be okay with not being perfect, which is hard for me. But I sat there, I'm like, this
I'm gonna
horse.
hit on that subject.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Well, that was a great story. I don't want to interrupt that.
No.
Awesome.
But it's just, I guess what I'm getting at is those horses have such an emotional and spiritual investment, or at least with me, because I learn from them. You just watch them. Even with kids on lesson horses, it's you just make these connections, and I think it's beautiful that God uses livestock as analogies and metaphors in the Bible, and it's just
all the time.
I will never not be in the horse industry, because I don't know what it would feel like to not have that constant reminder. And for me personally, and it sounds like you too, that horse is a reminder even when you don't expect it. And I think people can probably get that from other places. But personally, I think for both of us, we're both kind of in that same space. But please, what were you going to say?
Well, you talked about perfection. And how many times have you seen the Facebook post or heard the trainer say, 1% better every day?
Yeah.
1% better every day. That's what I want, 1% better every day. That's unrealistic because I tell people in my clinics all the time, quit shooting for perfection. Because for starters, you're being a nag to your horse. and there's no such thing as perfection.
You have bad days.
So it's a neat thing that I get to do because I can, and I'm not a Bible thumper, but I know who I want to serve, you know, and I know who's blessed me to do what I do. I couldn't saddle a horse without what he's given me.
That's
so right. I give him credit because guess what? Those folks paid to be here, so I can talk about whatever I want. What are you going to do, leave?
That's right.
But I say, you know, when you think about that 1% better every day, I said, you know what? You ever have a bad day? Maybe your horse is just having a bad main day. I said, so when I'm training at home, just because he slid 20 feet yesterday, he ain't got to give me 21 today. He ain't even got to give me 18. You don't have to be better than you were yesterday to make me happy. You only got to try. And I said, you think Christ expects perfection out of any of us sinning schmucks? He knows we're incapable of it. On our greatest day, we're a sinning schmuck.
Absolutely.
But he loves us anyway, and all he wants us to do is try. As long as you're trying, I'm okay with you. So I take that to my horses in my daily training every time. You don't have to be better than you were yesterday, but you do have to try. I want you to try.
That's right.
And as long as you're trying, we're okay.
Give me some sort
and
of
that
effort.
gives them more try. Gives them horses a reason to try harder.
Because it's not I'm going to be in trouble if I don't perform the same way we did yesterday. It's like the same, it's like if like you're in band or something and you're playing an instrument, you can read that same shit of music. That music hadn't changed. That instrument really hasn't changed, like the piano or something like that. It really hasn't changed. But some days just, like, I don't know what I was thinking. Oops. Or whatever it is that you're doing. Or the play, like football plays. If you want to throw it to a sport analogy, it's the same thing. You can have that same play.
Can you believe she knows football?
Oh, there's
in all respect.
Oh, yeah.
Best looking football player ever seen in my life.
Thank you. Sponsored by LBMS. Yeah, I grew up in the sports deal. I did the whole track, soccer, football, basketball. Not a basketball player. But livestock had my heart. And my dad wanted me to go to A&M and play soccer. Everyone thought I was going to get a full ride. That's just the expectation. Had a few surgeries. And I think without those, at the time it was kind of devastating. But that changed my focus into doing something I'm really passionate about, which is the ag side of deal. And, it's funny. A lot of people will look at maybe things that aren't so fortunate that happen in their life, and they tend to look at the negative parts of it. But really, it's down the road, I think it's an opportunity to connect with other people in ways that you couldn't before.
Absolutely.
A beautiful story with a friend of mine. She lost a sibling, and that's hard. Less than 30 years old, losing a sibling to a disease, and it was heartbreaking watching her because I couldn't relate to her. Right. And we were driving through Post, Texas, of all places.
I know where Post is.
Oh, yeah, Post.
Yeah.
That Papa D's ice cream parlor right there. Kid you not. We pulled into there and had ourselves an ice cream cone, and the lady there was able to connect with my friend because she lost a daughter. And my friend's dad is really struggling with it. And so it was the most beautiful God moment because I couldn't relate to her. My other friend and I couldn't relate to her. Most people can't. But this lady, nowhere, out of the blue, Post, Texas, ice cream parlor, Papa D's is the place, or Daddy D's, Daddy P's, something like that. Anyway, it's behind the McDonald's. And they had a conversation, and it was just, I started crying because I'm looking at this is a God moment. And it was just a beautiful part where it's surrounded by sorrow. But if she hadn't lost a daughter, and if my friend hadn't lost a brother, they would have never been able to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And now, once she heals, she'll be able to help other people.
Sure. So, being in livestock, you deal with life and death a lot, right? So, my dad, when I was a little boy, I had a pony die, and I was taking it pretty hard. And he was like, "If you're going to be a cowboy, you know, you got to learn have to deal with that, bud." So, I don't know if you know how big a mule deer's bladder is. They're a buck, full-grown buck, about that big around, about that long. Not very big.
Huh.
And because your story made me think of this. My dad got into guiding hunters. We had a guiding business, and some guys from Georgia came up deer hunting. Guy made what I call a California heart shot. Shot this buck right in the butt. And my dad went and was gutting the deer for him. And he had a cut on his hand. And got leptospirosis from that deer. And being in your industry, I know you know what lepto is. And I'm sure it can be cured now, but back then, and nobody knew what it was, didn't know how to deal with it. So, in the reality of things, a bullet shot at a mule deer, not to end or start a war or assassinate anybody, just shot at a mule deer. Had it hit an inch in any other direction, probably wouldn't have broke that bladder. I would not be sitting here talking to you today.
Wow.
That changed the course of my life, you know, dramatically.
Absolutely.
Because I would not be who I am.
Good,
today.
bad, pretty, and the ugly. That's who you are.
So,
makes you who you are.
And I've never been mad about it, you know. So I believe we serve a big God, and my dad's whole life, and ultimately his death, which totally changed the course of my life, it brought me sitting here with you, might go to a listener that decides to maybe pick up their Bible and accept Christ, and his life and my life could be for just that one moment.
Yep.
And that's how big our God is.
That's right.
So when there is tragedy, as bad as it is, you know, his hand is in it. And if you just get through it,
Absolutely.
the blessings will come. Because I got a beautiful life. I mean, I miss my dad all the time. He gave me the love of the horses and the cowboying and stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I wouldn't trade my life for nothing. I got a great bunch of kids, and my wife works her butt off, and it's just it's a good life.
Absolutely.
You know, and I've got to do things I never imagined. And all because of a rifle shot.
Oh, yeah.
So the ripple effects of that can go on literally forever. You know, if you think about it.
Goes to show the decisions you make today can impact you down the road. But I have the same thought process. The whole, when I came out here last year, it was if I could get one person to listen to this section about God, or just talking about how he impacted my life, or if it can hit one person and one person think about God or connect with God, that to me is more than I could ever ask. It's the same thing about leaving that legacy, kind of tying this whole conversation back full circle. It's that leaving that legacy, and it may not happen the way it's nowadays, may not happen the most conventional ways as it used to, but yeah, it's a beautiful world if you choose to look at it that way.
Yeah, choices.
That's right.
So I carry a chain link in my pocket, have for years, and my kids do too, as a reminder to every day, the second you wake up, you start choosing your chains. Maybe you're chained to alcoholism, drugs, greed, envy, jealousy. There's so many things you can chain yourself to that are going to drag you backwards. They're tied to an anchor and they're dragging you back. Or you can chain yourself to things that matter, the heart of Christ and the people you love, and positive people and good experiences and good thoughts instead of dwelling on the bad that's happened to you. Think of that good thing that happened. So it's a reminder every day, choose your chains wisely, because you're going to choose them every day. As soon as you wake up, you start choosing them.
I love that. I
So-
love that. That's great. And it's the same thing that, what's that saying? You can't choose your blood, but you can choose your people. Don't worry, family, I love you. But it's people that don't come from maybe a type of background, or they come from just, you hear these stories of just really rough environment that some of these kids are growing up in, or they grew up in, if they're adults now. But it's the same thing. You can choose to change that trajectory if you just got to quit thinking on the negative, like you said, and shift that focus on a brighter path.
Yeah,
But-
and all these life things go right into what we do with our horses every day.
Yep.
You know, how you going to treat them?
Mm-hmm.
You going to bring all their garbage or all your garbage when you come and get on them?
Mm-hmm.
I used to tell the guys that come to apprentice under me in Idaho, I don't care if you're sick. I don't care if you're hungover. I don't care if you just caught your best girl making out with your best friend. It's got nothing to do with that horse. And if you can't leave your trash on the ground, don't get on him. That horse got nothing to do with it. So don't get up there and start picking on him because you're in a pissy mood.
What I used to do is, and I still do this, if I was ever in like just bad day, rough day, not feeling it, just and nothing horse related, maybe work, it may be school, it may be something, relationship, it may be something else. What I do is I find a lot of peace in the barn, but what I refuse to do is to do something specific with that horse. You saddle up and I just sit on him and we'll just walk in a circle. Just walk the pen, go out. I used to walk all over the property back in Virginia. It just not really doing anything specific, but it gave me just this decompression moment. But I think I didn't ever want to train, or I would say train. I didn't ever want to work an animal
Yeah.
when I was going through something rough. That's why you see these trainers with these just anger problems, and you could tell, like, you know, if they show up to the show pissed off already, cussing up a storm. That horse just marked a 70, 3-4 last week, or like a 221, 222, and it was beautiful. And then like today, just come like shit after shit after shit, and it's like and every time toss the reins or a little more pissed off, and it's like I'm just not gonna talk with you. But it's the same thing. You can't. That again, going back to the energy we talked about. That energy, they feel it.
Oh, yeah. Most shows, go watch the warm-up pen before reining.
Oh, the rating. I haven't.
So I had this really negative old client in California. He was a pain, but I ended up owning the horse that I trained for him. It was a phenomenal stud horse. And so I'm in the warm-up pen, and I usually got my leg thrown over his neck, telling somebody a re-ride story or telling jokes or cowboy poetry. I'm talking something. And everybody's out
like
there.
over the horn, like on this, like almost. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, do the same thing.
And, the other guys are out there spinning and sliding and fencing their horses and cantering. And I'm like, and he's like, well, aren't you going to warm him up? Well, yeah, of course I'm going to warm him up. But you know what, Don? He was broke before I put him on the trailer this morning. I don't want him tired and pissed off by the time we go through that gate. So those guys that are out there just hammering on them. What do you think you're going to accomplish in the next hour and a half before that class? That's going to fix, well, you should have took care of at home. I treat show day like a day off for me and my horse. Then they don't get hot and stupid in the show pen. And so many people are such egomaniacs like if they're not going to be like a 72, 73, they'll intentionally school a horse and get a 0 when the horse didn't do nothing wrong. But they know that it wasn't quite right, and their ego,
just take that penalty.
their ego can't hack a 68. That would just be devastating. If I get a 65, I'm not going to go bawl on the side of my trailer. It's like, that sucked. I know we got homework to do.
That's a story, yep.
But you think about how many times you've seen right in the middle of a class where that trainer intentionally schools that horse gets a 0 because they can't handle a 68, 69. But you know what you just did? You just screwed that horse's lifetime earnings because maybe he would have placed and even won $30. It's still on his record as career earnings, and you're screwing your client.
Yeah.
And what did you really fix in there? That's your ego being a problem, not the horse. So, of course, I don't want to get a 65.
No.
But if that's what you give me that day, I'm like, well, I know what we got to work on.
Part of it. That's like the horse industry is a really humbling sport to get into.
It'll get you sooner or later.
Oh yeah. And I always thought it was kind of, well, I understood the reason, but for about 2 years, I was just at the cuttings every weekend, almost every day type deal. And so I'd watch these people showing whatnot, and they lose a cow or something. It could have been just a wild cow. I mean, it's part of it. It happens. And so just a, rough set. And you'll see them, as soon as they lose that cow, some of them will just leave the arena. So if they lose a cow, they might cut another one and school on them, which is fine. But I always thought it was, when I first started, I didn't quite understand why, if you just lost a cow, why you just walk out of the arena. You just turn them around a little bit, make a few cuts here and there, and then just leave. To me, it didn't make sense, and I understood people's perspective. I don't necessarily, situation depending, I don't necessarily agree with that,
right.
But I remember that was my second time showing cutters. Of course, I knew everything, right? And so I knew I didn't know everything, but I walked in there. I was like, okay, we had a really great week this week. Really great week. Rode everybody. It was fine. Worked a couple of cows. I did great. And again, with that mental expectation of what you wanted to do. And it was just, but even if I lost a cow, I still would go in there and finish the run because you could, it's -5, but you could still place. I don't know what the person behind me is going to do. And I guess there's a threshold of where's a good place to end versus what's just quitting.
Yeah. Got to use wisdom in that. In every situation, it varies, what you're feeling with your horse. And that's a really tough thing to teach people, is that feel of when you should go on and when you need to just stop and pat him on the neck and go, yeah, that sucked, but
better luck next time.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, Greg, I really appreciate having you on. For those who want to get in contact with you,
Greg Robinson Horsemanship on Facebook, on Instagram. I've got a YouTube channel, Greg Robinson Horsemanship, that I really enjoy throwing, little shorts out. And I might be ranch roping, I might be branding calves, might be working on stops.
Versatility.
Yeah. It's been a blast. We covered a lot.
We did.
Great.
There's a lot. Look forward to having you on, hopefully again in the future.
Oh, yeah. I'll come back anytime you want.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm glad that Robert from Ag Gear gave me a call. Says, hey, you want to go to Dallas
That's
tomorrow?
right.
You bet. I'll come running.
That's right. Sponsored by Ag Gear for sure. Again, if you need to get a hold of Greg, there's his contact.
Yep. Holler at me anytime. Come ride around.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a great conversation that we had with Greg Robinson. If you want to follow him, go ahead and give him a follow. But also be sure to like and subscribe for more industry professionals coming soon.